let's talk about making multiple levels. So let's just do a quick play test here. When I'm running this, I'm going to go and just quickly get to the end of level teleporter here. I'm going to complete this quest that I built. Run over here. Give this guy his apple. Make him happy. Get him to open up the pathway. And then as soon as I touch this little platform, bam, I'm teleported to the next level. You'll notice here that I'm in the first person view. That's because the next scene, I have it in first person mode, but you can pick and choose which version that you want. And I've populated the scene with a few little NPCs. This one just says, I need an apple as well, just because that's what I wrote. How's it going? And then we have another version of this sign here. Under construction, do not pass or risk death. I just replicated these things from before, but you'll see that I have this kind of new scene here. It needs some editing. It needs some more work, but it's definitely a different space that I've continued the storytelling into, and I can climb up here on this cliff. And so how do we make this new scene that we can transition to? Sorry. The first thing we want to look at is the prefab that we have for our end of level platform. In our prefabs, this level end platform is already built for us, and if you drag one in, you'll see that it has some basic renderers and colliders that allow us to touch it and have us teleported, and finally a go to next level script that has a level the level text needed. So what do we do with this? Well, you'll see that the first one I made says scene 2. What does scene 2 mean? Well, it's the name of the scene that I made that I want to move over to next. One thing that we need to know about in Unity, though, is that Unity doesn't just let us move from level to level without a little bit more tweaking. Under File, Build Settings, I actually have to put my levels in this section here. I'm going to remove them, which means that our level management is going to break. And if I go back into Build Settings, what I need to do is take my story scene that I'm in and drag them up here, as well as my scene 2 and drag it up here. Until I do this, I can't transfer between levels. But now that I've done this, scene 2 is going to be the scene that's loaded when I step on this platform. Let's create a brand new scene to see how this all gets built from scratch. So I'm going to make a new scene. I'm going to call this scene 3. And I'm just going to pop it open here and see that it's empty with nothing happening inside of it. The first thing I want to do when I make a new scene is actually delete the camera, because I don't need another camera. My players are going to bring their own cameras when I bring in the prefabs. So what I'm going to do to start with is actually just create a new terrain, which is what we do to kind of craft our world. Now this one's very big. So something I can do in my terrain is click on the settings on the side and go down to where it says the resolution and change the width. I think that 50 by 50 is probably going to be good enough for now for our sizes of world, and leave everything else kind of off to the side there for now. If you've never done this before, here's a really cool feature, the paint terrain one, where if I click on paint, raise or lower terrain, I can choose a brush that has a pattern I want to paint. I'll choose maybe just a circle for now. Brush size determines how big the brush is on the screen. So if I crank this up, you'll see that it's actually bigger than the terrain. Oops, altogether, here's a bit of a smaller size. And the opacity determines how quickly it applies. So if I crank it up and I click, it makes a big dent in the world right away. If I crank it down, I have to click and drag to actually see a change be affected really slowly for really fine details. So what I might do is crank up both of these a little bit and just make some kind of like side mountainous edges here for the player not to be able to kind of wander off where they shouldn't be. You can make this look a lot nicer in yours. I'm just going to kind of crank this up. And here's kind of the entry point here, but they can't get out of this section or fall off the world. Let's block it all off for them. They're kind of contained. Maybe we pretend they came down through the ridge here or something. We'll see where we add our player shortly. And I'm going to crank it down quite a bit and go to this other pattern and just add some kind of like nice detailing with a little bit of roughness here to kind of give this level a little bit more of a sense of I don't know, detail and interest. Okay, so now what do we do to kind of give this level a little bit more of a beautiful look? Well, if I go over to my paint texture setting at the top here, I'm going to be able to actually choose, where's my texture settings? Oh, your project might come with this pre-built. I'm not sure how it'll transfer over, but if you don't see any textures, what we can do is click on Edit Terrain Layers and create a new one. And here we have to find a texture that we want to use. I'm going to choose this grass texture and double click, which is now going to apply the grass to the whole map. The grass is on the mountains as well. We'll fix that shortly, but something that I need to do with this grass when I click on the layer is actually head down and change the tile settings. Right now, it's 2 by 2. If I make this bigger by clicking and dragging, you'll see that it stretches it out. Maybe I can even type in a number here, 10 by 10, which makes it kind of a bit more zoomed in. 20 by 20. You want to get it to a level where it looks really nice to your eye. So I think that's okay for now for the grass texture. Wonderful. And I'm going to create another layer by clicking on this edit terrain and create another layer. And I'm going to look for that rocky surface that I knew I had from my mountains in the previous map here. And my eye isn't picking it up. Let's see if I can find it here. Let's zoom in a little bit so I can see it a bit more clearly. We have our grassy texture there. And where is... Do you guys see it? Am I blind? Why am I being so blind? Flash. Oh, cliff texture right here. You can always import more textures into your worlds later on. But with this cliff texture selected, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of do a similar zoom, 20 by 20. And it's kind of similar idea. The brush size and the opacity determines how quickly you paint it on. But I'm just going to click on these cliffs, and this is the opacity is low. It kind of paints it a bit slowly. Let's make this a bit quicker by just like cranking that up. And everywhere there's a cliff, I'm just going to paint this texture onto it to give it more of a cliff-like tone and texture. And so let's just make this look a little bit more refined. Maybe you want to edit some of the settings to make it look a bit nicer. I think the levels of stuff isn't actually optimized just yet. I'm not going to make this perfect. I'm just going to kind of get it roughly constructed. Here's a bit of a cliff. I want to give it a little bit of a rocky texture to it as well. Up here, not every angle is going to be perfect. And maybe I want to crank the opacity down really far and just do a bit of a transition layer so that it transitions a little bit. See how it's like a bit of rockiness into the grass there, maybe a little bit higher. Just so that you get a bit of a kind of a rocky bottom to the bottom of those hills there. Transition into the grass, so it looks a little bit like the grass is running onto some of the rocks at the bottom there. Okay, I think that looks half decent. And now we have a cool kind of layout of a level to interact with. Now, next, pause if you need to build your level. Come back to this when you're ready. And when you are, let's actually add in some of the other content that we need for this level. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to actually go to our prefabs and think about the things that we want to exist in this space. The first one being our actual character that we control. Do you want a click move player or do you want a first person player? I'm going to have a click move player in this level because it has a special feature we have to build in. The first person one just kind of works. Now notice it kind of gets warped in a weird spot. And remember what I said before about us having trouble moving things with some cameras attached to it? So if I go to my pivot, even this one even has an issue with the pivot where I haven't moved it from. So I have to actually kind of find up in the sky where where the movement is and kind of just adjust it around. Maybe I'll have this fixed by the time you see this project, but in case you don't, you just have to kind of mess around with it a little bit until you can kind of get it roughly into the right spot. And actually, maybe the easiest thing to do is to think about the position that it's currently at right here. And maybe if I put y equals 0, minus 5, minus 6, minus 7, minus 8, 9, 10, minus 11, minus 10.5. Looks pretty close. And maybe I want to shift this over here a little bit. So let's, man, I really wish I'd be able to move this with my pivot. I should actually set this object better so that you can do this. I'll try to have this done by the time you guys see this project. But just clicking here, I can shift this and adjust it over to be not so terrible. Let's get it over here. Actually, that's pretty decent in this spot here. Now, when I press run, I should see that my character should be on the map here, loaded in. However, I don't yet have the ability to click and move it around the scene because when I use a click move player, there's some special things that I need to integrate. So you know what? Let's do the first person one for now, and I'll show you if you're interested in the click move player in the next video. Let's just put the first person player in here, and it should actually spawn in quite a bit more easily, where I should be able to just move it into place. Actually, if I just go down here with it selected, and it's disabled right now, but I'm gonna go game object, move to view. It should pull me up here, and it didn't. It pulled me into the sky? Why would it do that? Game object, align with view. Wow, this is being so finicky. Let me try to fix these before you guys deal with it. But if not, you're gonna have to have the fun of adjusting this. Oh, it's because of the UI component still. And okay, here's our pivot. Let's move this up and in here, over here, and get this pulled out. And, lost him again. up. Here he is. Welcome to the scene, my friend. And I'm going to put him where I kind of want things to be entered in at the start here. Perfect. Let's go back to test this out and see if I can control it. And cool, this is controllable. I can move around the scene. I can't exit it, but I think I should be able to walk up some of these little ledges nicely. Cool, so I have a nice little new scene to walk around in. And now what's next to do? Well, I probably want to have a way to exit the scene back to my previous one. So what if I just move this guy a little bit further out and I add a level transition thing here where I can go back to the previous level. How do I manage that again? Well, under my scenes, my first level was called story scene. Maybe I want to call this level 1. That's okay. I'm going to call this story scene, which should allow me to teleport back to the story scene if I touch that. Let's just give it a try. Take my guy here. Oh, the camera broke. What happened? Interesting. Well, the story scene thing works to take us back here. My camera broke on my first person player for some reason. Let's head back in by double clicking on this thing and maybe move him a little bit further. I think it's because of the way that he spawns in a little bit close to the wall there. Let's take the test one more time here. And no, we've totally moved something. So I'll have to fix that as well. Let me fix it really quick. Okay, I discovered what I did wrong here. This is an easy mistake to make that I did sloppily. I moved the capsule inside of this object, which means that now it's shifted away from the actual some of the other camera work that's being done. So if I ever want to move something, I need to make sure it's the top parent thing that I move so that I don't accidentally have it breaking a bunch of stuff. So actually what I'm going to do here is just adjust by clicking and dragging the exposition a bit like this. That's actually an easy way to adjust things around. And I'm going to make sure that I add back in my end of level platform, maybe like right here. Let's get this to, what was our scene called? This is called our story scene. And let's test this one more time. And as I touch it, I go back to that previous level. Awesome. So now that I'm in here, I can totally add some other content to the game. Maybe I have some prefabs that I want to add. Maybe I want an NPC over here. Maybe I want a signpost here. Maybe I want a tree standing kind of over on the hill here, blocking things. Maybe I have other objects I've added in that I want to put in place. I can always kind of adjust the levels of this so it doesn't clip through the world quite so much. I can add some story to this NPC. Maybe I want to add some watermelons to collect or some custom items that I want to put in. And I can start to build more story elements and quests in this space with the pre-created content or the content that I've created myself. And I also have the ability to teleport back and forth between scenes. Last thing I want to show you here, just to make sure that we're understanding how this all works, is let's go back to my story scene and think about how do I get to that scene in the first place? Well, let's make another teleport, maybe a level teleport behind this wall that lets me teleport to the next section. And I want to have this one be scene 3, that new scene that I made. If I go and I complete this quest here, let's go and just do this together really quick. So I go and I know that to get, I think, oh, we put the watermelon here he needed, right? Instead of the present. Let's give him the watermelon, or the woman a watermelon. And now that that's been done, if I go over and step on this portal, it's going to give me an error. It says scene 3 couldn't be loaded because it has not been added to the build settings. Oh yeah, we have to make sure that when we add a new scene, that we go to File, Build Settings, and drag the new scene into the list so that it's now accessible by the game manager. So I'm gonna head up and just complete this quest really quick. Talk to this person, get my quest completed, and now when I step here, boop, I teleport into the other scene, and I can pick up other objects, I can talk to other people, although there's nothing been set up for these ones yet, so I can't do anything yet. Awesome, so we have most of the content set up that we need. However, in the next video, and it might be the last video actually, I'm gonna show you how to manage the third person clicker in a new scene, because we have to do one extra step to get it working with our navigation mesh. So if you're interested in that, watch the next video.